Charlestown State Prison, Massachusetts, March 27, 1946, 11:43 p.m. Malcolm Little, prisoner 228043, sat on his cell floor with a bedsheet tied into a noose. He was 20 years old. He had been in prison for 27 days. He had 10 years ahead of him, 3,650 days of concrete bars and hopelessness. He couldn't take it anymore. Tonight he would hang himself. Then his cellmate, a 45-year-old burglar named John Bembry, walked in and said, "You planning to use that, Red? Because if you are, you should know hanging yourself with a prison bedsheet takes 4 to 5 minutes of choking. You don't die quick. You strangle slowly. Painful as hell. I've seen 3 men try it. Only one succeeded. The other 2 just gave themselves brain damage and woke up still in prison, but dumber." Malcolm looked at Bembry. "Why do you care?" "Because you're smart," Bembry said. "Too smart to waste. And because I made a bet with another con that you'd either be dead or transformed within a year. I bet on transformed. Don't make me lose money." For the next 11 months, Bembry became Malcolm's prison mentor. He taught Malcolm to read philosophy, to debate, to think critically. "The white man didn't just enslave our bodies," Bembry told Malcolm. "He enslaved our minds. You want revenge? Don't kill yourself. Educate yourself. Become dangerous in a way they can't control." By February 1947, Malcolm had read 47 books. By 1948, he was leading the prison debate team. By 1952, he was Malcolm X. But none of it would have happened if Bembry hadn't walked into that cell on March 27, 1946, and stopped Malcolm from hanging himself. In 2019, Bembry's grandson revealed his grandfather's prison journal. The March 27, 1946 entry reads, "Stopped the red-haired kid from killing himself tonight. Told him he was too smart to waste. Hope I'm right." This is the story of Malcolm X's first year in prison, the year that almost ended in suicide, but instead became the foundation of his transformation. Subscribe now because this story reveals the darkest moment in Malcolm X's life that almost no one knows about. February 27, 1946, 2:17 p.m. Malcolm Little arrived at Charlestown State Prison in a police transport van, handcuffed and shackled. He had just been sentenced to 8-10 years for burglary, breaking and entering, and larceny. At 20 years old, he would spend his entire 20s behind bars. The prison gates opened. Malcolm stepped out into the yard. The first thing he noticed was the silence. Not actual silence, but the oppressive quiet of men who had given up hope. "Welcome to Charlestown," a guard said. "You're prisoner number 22843. That's your name now. Forget Malcolm Little. Forget Detroit Red. You're a number." Malcolm was processed, fingerprinted, photographed, stripped, searched, deloused, and given a gray prison uniform. Then he was escorted to Cell Block D, a 2-story concrete building housing 200 men and 100 cells. His cell was 6 feet wide, 9 feet long, 2 bunks, 1 toilet, 1 sink, no privacy. His cellmate was already there, John Bembry, a 45-year-old black man serving 12 years for burglary. Bembry looked up from the book he was reading, Plato's Republic, and said, "You must be the new guy. They call you Red?" "Yeah," Malcolm said quietly. "I'm Bembry. Top bunk is mine. Bottom is yours. We share the sink and toilet. I read a lot, so I need quiet after 9 p.m. You snore?" "I don't know." "Well, if you do, we'll figure it out." Bembry returned to his book. Malcolm climbed onto the bottom bunk and stared at the ceiling. The reality of his situation hit him like a train. 10 years, 3,650 days. He would be 30 years old when he got out if he survived that long. That first night, Malcolm barely slept. The sounds of prison were overwhelming. Men coughing, yelling, crying, steel doors slamming, guards' footsteps echoing. Malcolm closed his eyes and thought, "I'm going to die here." For the first 27 days, Malcolm existed in a state of numb survival. He woke up. He ate. He worked in the prison workshop. He returned to his cell. He stared at the ceiling. He didn't speak to anyone except Bembry, and even then only when necessary. Other inmates tried to befriend him or intimidate him. Malcolm ignored them all. He was sinking into a depression so deep he couldn't see a way out. Until March 27, when Bembry found him with a noose. March 27, 1946. Malcolm sat on the floor of his cell, a bedsheet twisted into a crude noose in his hands. He had been planning this for 3 days. He had tested the sheet's strength by tying it to the bunk and pulling with all his weight. It would hold. The plan was simple. Wait until Bembry fell asleep. Bembry slept like the dead after 11 p.m. Tie the sheet to the top bunk frame. Stand on the sink. Put the noose around his neck. Step off. It would be over in minutes. No more prison. No more hopelessness. No more Malcolm Little. The failure. The criminal. The wasted life. Malcolm stood on the sink, tying the sheet to the bunk frame, when he heard Bembry's voice behind him. "You planning to use that, Red?" Malcolm froze. He thought Bembry was asleep. "Because if you are," Bembry continued calmly, "you should know, hanging yourself with a prison bedsheet takes 4 or 5 minutes of choking. You don't die quick. You strangle slowly. Your body convulses. You lose bladder control. It's painful as hell." Malcolm climbed down from the sink, but didn't look at Bembry. "I've seen 3 men try it in here," Bembry said. "Only one succeeded. The other 2 got found by guards halfway through, got cut down and woke up with brain damage from oxygen deprivation. Now they're still in prison, but they can barely speak or think. You want that?" "I want to be done," Malcolm said quietly. "Done with what?" "Done with this. Done with 10 years in a cage. Done with being nobody." Bembry sat up on his bunk. "You've been here 27 days, Red. You've got 3,623 days left. You gonna quit on day 27? "Why shouldn't I?" "Because you're smart," Bembry said. "I've been watching you. You're not like the other young cons who come through here. They're angry but stupid. You're angry and intelligent. That's rare, that's valuable." "What good is intelligence in prison?" Malcolm asked bitterly. "Everything," Bembry replied. "Let me tell you something, Red. The white man didn't just enslave our bodies with chains, he enslaved our minds with ignorance. You know why they don't want us to read? Why they don't want us to learn? Because an educated black man is the most dangerous thing in America." Malcolm looked at Bembry for the first time. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about weaponizing your brain," Bembry said. "You want revenge against the system that put you here? Don't kill yourself. Transform yourself. Use these 10 years to become someone they can't control. Read, study, learn. When you walk out of here in 1956, walk out dangerous." Malcolm sat on his bunk. "How?" "Start by not hanging yourself tonight," Bembry said. "Then tomorrow I'll show you." Malcolm untied the noose. He didn't sleep that night, not because he was planning suicide, but because Bembry's words wouldn't stop echoing. Become dangerous in a way they can't control. The next morning, Bembry handed Malcolm a book, The Story of Civilization by Will Durant. "Read this," Bembry said, "then we'll talk." Malcolm looked at the book. It was 1,200 pages. "I'm not reading all this," Malcolm said. Bembry smiled. "Then you'll die ignorant. Your choice." March 28, 1946. Morning. Malcolm held The Story of Civilization and stared at the first page. He hadn't read a real book since dropping out of school at age 14. Most of his reading since then had been comic books, gambling sheets, and movie magazines. But Bembry's challenge echoed, "Then you'll die ignorant." Malcolm started reading. The first chapter was about ancient Sumeria. Malcolm barely understood it. The words were too complex, the concepts too abstract. He almost gave up after 5 pages. But then Bembry asked, "What did you learn?" "Nothing," Malcolm said. "I don't understand half the words." "Then look them up," Bembry said, handing Malcolm a dictionary. "Every word you don't know, write it down. Look it up. Learn it. That's how you build a vocabulary. That's how you build a mind." For the next 3 months, Malcolm followed Bembry's system. Read for 2 hours every morning. Write down every unfamiliar word. Look up definitions. Use the words in sentences. Discuss what he learned with Bembry. It was slow, painful work. But gradually, Malcolm's comprehension improved. By June 1946, Malcolm had finished The Story of Civilization. It had taken him 3 months to read what Bembry could read in a week. But he had finished it. "What did you learn?" Bembry asked. Malcolm thought carefully. "I learned that civilizations rise and fall, that power shifts, that the people who control knowledge control everything, and that black people had civilizations, Egypt, Ethiopia, Mali, before white people were even literate." Bembry smiled. "Now you're thinking. Here's your next book." He handed Malcolm The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois. Malcolm's education had begun. By September 1946, Malcolm had read 12 books. But reading wasn't enough for Bembry. "Knowledge without action is useless," Bembry said. "You need to learn how to argue, how to debate, how to destroy someone intellectually." So Bembry introduced Malcolm to the Prison Debate Club, a group of inmates who met weekly to argue about philosophy, politics, and religion. Malcolm's first debate topic, "Is religion the opiate of the masses?" He was terrified, but Bembry told him, "They're all smarter than you right now, so you'll lose, but you'll learn, and losing is how you get better." September 14, 1946, 7 p.m. Prison library. Malcolm walked into his first debate club meeting. 8 inmates sat in a circle, mostly older men, all black, all intellectuals serving long sentences. The moderator was a 52-year-old forger named Professor, his prison nickname because he'd been a college teacher before his crimes. "Gentlemen," Professor said, "tonight's topic is religion the opiate of the masses." Karl Marx's famous statement. Is he correct? We'll have 2 speakers, one for, one against. Read your news so you'll argue against Marx. Bembry will argue for. Malcolm's stomach dropped. He was supposed to defend religion against Marx's critique. He barely understood Marx. Bembry spoke first. His argument was devastating. Religion tells oppressed people to accept suffering now for rewards later. It says, don't fight your masters, pray for them. God will reward you in heaven. This keeps the oppressed docile. Marx was right. Religion is a tool of control, an opiate that numbs people to their chains. Malcolm had 5 minutes to respond. His mind raced. He stood up and said the only thing he could think of. Marx saw religion as control, but he didn't see what religion gives people that nothing else does. Hope. When you're enslaved, when you're oppressed, when you're in prison, hope is the only thing keeping you alive. Take away religion, and what do you give people instead? Marx offers revolution, but revolution takes time, organization, and power. Religion offers immediate comfort. That's not opiate, that's survival. The room was silent. Then Professor said, interesting, not sophisticated, but interesting. You'll lose this debate on technical grounds, but you identified something Marx missed, the psychological function of religion. Keep working on that. Malcolm lost the debate 7-1. Only Bembry voted for him out of loyalty, not logic. But he was hooked. The intellectual combat, the challenge of arguing ideas, the respect he earned even in defeat, it was intoxicating. Over the next 5 months, Malcolm debated every week. Warren or Lucian, is democracy possible under capitalism? Lost. Do humans have free will? Warren or Lucian, is violence ever justified? Can art exist without suffering? Is education liberation or indoctrination? Won his first victory. By February 1947, Malcolm was winning more than losing. His vocabulary had expanded. His arguments had sharpened. His confidence had grown. You're not the same kid who walked in here a year ago, Bembry told him. That kid wanted to die. This kid wants to conquer. But Malcolm's transformation brought new dangers. Not all inmates appreciated his intellectual rise. Some saw him as uppity, arrogant, too smart for his own good. In March 1947, a white inmate named Sullivan, a racist con serving time for assault, confronted Malcolm in the yard. You think you're better than everyone because you read books, Red. You're still just another knicker in a cage. Malcolm could have fought him physically, but Bembry had taught him better. Malcolm replied, you're right, Sullivan. I'm in a cage, just like you. But when I leave here, I'll leave educated. You'll leave angry. I'll be dangerous. You'll be bitter. That's the difference. Sullivan swung at him. Malcolm didn't fight back. He let the guards break it up. Sullivan got 30 days in solitary. Malcolm got nothing. Bembry smiled. You just won without throwing a punch. That's power. July 1947, 18 months into Malcolm's sentence. A letter arrived for Malcolm from his brother Reginald. Malcolm hadn't heard from any family member since entering prison. He assumed they had abandoned him. But Reginald's letter changed everything. Brother Malcolm, I've found something that will save your life. There's a man named Elijah Muhammad. He leads the Nation of Islam. He teaches that the white man is the devil, that black people are the original people of earth, that we can be free if we follow Allah's teachings. I've joined the nation, and I want you to join too. Stop eating pork. Stop smoking. Follow the teachings, and when you get out, you'll be a new man. Your brother Reginald. Malcolm showed the letter to Bembry. What do you think? Malcolm asked. Bembry read it carefully. I think your brother found religion. Whether it's truth or just another form of control, I can't say. But here's what I know. You've spent 18 months building your mind. Don't let anyone, not Elijah Muhammad, not me, not anyone tell you what to think. Use that mind you've built to evaluate this teaching. Read it, study it, question it, then decide. Malcolm wrote back to Reginald. Send me everything about Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. Over the next year, Reginald sent Malcolm books, pamphlets, and letters explaining the nation's theology. White people were created 6,000 years ago by an evil scientist named Yaqub. Black people were the original humans, stolen from Africa and enslaved. The white man is the devil. Separation from whites is the only path to freedom. Malcolm read everything. And slowly, he began to believe. Not because the theology made historical sense. Bembry helped him identify its contradictions, but because it made emotional sense. "This teaching explains my anger," Malcolm told Bembry. "It tells me why my father was murdered, why my mother went insane, why I ended up in prison. It's not my fault, it's the white devil's fault." Bembry was concerned. "Red, be careful. You're replacing one form of thinking with another. You're not questioning anymore. You're accepting. That's dangerous." "But it feels right," Malcolm said. "Feelings aren't truth," Bembry replied. "Truth requires evidence, logic, reason. What evidence is there that white people were created by a mad scientist 6,000 years ago?" Malcolm couldn't answer that. But he didn't care. The Nation of Islam gave him something education alone couldn't: purpose. By April 1948, Malcolm had fully committed to the Nation of Islam's teachings. He stopped eating pork. He prayed 5 times a day. The NOI version. He changed his last name from Little to X, representing the African name stolen from him by slavery. Bembry watched this transformation with mixed feelings. He had saved Malcolm from suicide by teaching him to think critically. Now Malcolm was using that critical thinking to justify a theology Bembry found absurd. But Bembry also understood Malcolm needed more than books. He needed belonging. He needed identity. And the Nation of Islam gave him both. "Just promise me one thing, Red," Bembry said before Malcolm was transferred to another prison in 1949. "Never stop questioning, even when you think you've found the truth." John Elton Bembry died in 1975 at age 74. He had been released from prison in 1954 after serving 12 years. He lived quietly in Boston, working as a librarian, and rarely talked about his prison years. When he died, his grandson Michael Bembry, then 19 years old, inherited his grandfather's belongings. Among them, a leather-bound journal Bembry had kept during his prison years. Michael didn't read the journal immediately. He stored it in his attic for decades. In 2019, at age 63, Michael was cleaning out his attic when he found the journal again. This time, he read it. The journal contained daily entries from 1942 to 1954, Bembry's entire prison sentence. One entry stopped Michael cold. March 27, 1946. "Stop the red-haired kid from killing himself tonight. His name is Malcolm Little. He's 20 years old, sentenced to 10 years for burglary. He had a noose tied when I walked into the cell. I told him hanging himself would just leave him brain damaged, not dead. I also told him he was too smart to waste. I made a bet with another con that this kid would either be dead or transformed within a year. I bet on transformed. Hope I'm right. He's got potential. But prison breaks men with potential every day, we'll see." Michael kept reading. The journal documented Bembry's mentorship of Malcolm over 18 months. April 15, 1946. "Red is reading the story of civilization. Slowly, but he's reading. I gave him a dictionary. Told him to look up every word he doesn't know. He's frustrated, but he's not quitting. That's good." September 20, 1946. "Red's first debate tonight. He lost badly, but he identified something interesting. The psychological function of religion. Kid's got instincts, just needs refinement." July 12, 1947. "Red's brother sent him materials about some group called Nation of Islam. I'm worried. Red's built his critical thinking skills, but now he's abandoning them for religious certainty. I've seen this before, men who escape one prison just to enter another. Dogma. But maybe Red needs this. Maybe he needs to believe in something absolute before he can question it properly." February 8, 1949. Final entry about Malcolm. "Red is being transferred to Norfolk prison colony tomorrow. We said goodbye today. I told him never stop questioning. He said, I found my truth. I said, the moment you stop questioning your truth, it becomes your prison. He didn't understand. Maybe someday he will. I saved Red from hanging himself in 1946. I taught him to read, to think, to argue, but I couldn't stop him from joining a cult that teaches racial mythology. I hope he finds his way. He's capable of greatness or disaster. Probably both." Michael Bembry donated the journal to the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture in Harlem in 2020. Historians immediately recognized its significance. This was one of the only first-person accounts of Malcolm X's intellectual formation in prison. The journal reveals something Malcolm X never publicly acknowledged. He almost didn't survive his first month in prison. The transformation from Malcolm Little, the criminal, to Malcolm X, the revolutionary, nearly ended on day 27 with a bedsheet noose. Bembry saved him, but Bembry also planted the seeds that made Malcolm dangerous: critical thinking, intellectual confidence, and the belief that education is power. Years later, when Malcolm broke from the Nation of Islam in 1964 and began questioning everything he'd been taught, scholars believe it was Bembry's voice he remembered. Never stop questioning. Malcolm X was released from prison in August 1952 after serving 6.5 years of his 10-year sentence. He emerged as a committed follower of Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. For the next 11 years, 1952–1963, Malcolm would be the NOI's most effective spokesman. But in 1963–1964, Malcolm began questioning Elijah's teachings, especially after discovering Elijah's sexual abuse of underage girls. When Malcolm left the NOI in March 1964, many wondered, what gave him the courage to question a man he had worshipped for 11 years? Betty Shabazz, Malcolm's widow, later suggested an answer in a 1992 interview. Malcolm told me that in his first year in prison, a cellmate named Bembry taught him that no truth should be beyond questioning. Malcolm said Bembry saved his life twice, once by stopping him from suicide, and once by teaching him to think for himself. When Malcolm discovered Elijah's corruption, he remembered what Bembry taught him. The moment you stop questioning your truth, it becomes your prison. Malcolm X was assassinated on February 21, 1965. He was 39 years old. John Bembry, the man who saved Malcolm from suicide in 1946, died 10 years later in 1975, at age 74. The two men never saw each other again after Malcolm was transferred in 1949, but Bembry followed Malcolm's career from afar. According to his grandson, Bembry kept newspaper clippings of Malcolm's speeches and debates. When Malcolm was assassinated in 1965, Bembry attended the funeral in Harlem. He stood in the back, unnoticed. A week later, Bembry wrote in his journal, found after his death, February 28, 1965, "They killed Red yesterday. Malcolm X, the kid I saved from hanging himself 19 years ago. I watched him transform from a suicidal 20-year-old into one of the greatest minds of our time. I'm proud, but I'm also heartbroken. I taught him to question everything, and that questioning got him killed. Did I save him in 1946 just so he could be murdered in 1965? Or did I give him 19 years of purpose he wouldn't have had otherwise? I don't know. All I know is this. I bet on transformation. I won that bet. But transformation is dangerous. It got him killed. Maybe I should have let him hang himself. Maybe that would have been kinder. But I don't think so. Better to live 19 years as Malcolm X than to die on day 27 as Malcolm Little. Red made his choice. I just gave him the time to make it." In 2020, when Bembry's journal was made public, historians called it one of the most important Malcolm X documents ever discovered. It proved that Malcolm X's transformation didn't begin with the Nation of Islam in 1948. It began with John Bembry in 1946, a convicted burglar who saved a suicidal kid by teaching him that education is power. Bembry never sought recognition. He never wrote a memoir. He never gave interviews. He just saved a life. And that life changed the world. Malcolm X's first year in Charlestown State Prison teaches us something profound about transformation. Greatness often begins at the edge of despair. Malcolm stood on a sink with a noose around his neck on day 27 of a 3,650-day sentence. He was ready to die. One conversation with one cellmate changed everything. Bembry didn't give Malcolm money, connections, or freedom. He gave him something more valuable, a reason to live, a method for thinking, a belief that his mind could be his weapon. That was enough. Malcolm went on to read hundreds of books in prison. He became the prison debate champion. He transformed from Detroit Red the hustler into Malcolm X the revolutionary. But it all started with a man named Bembry saying, "You're too smart to waste." How many people are one conversation away from transformation? How many people are standing on the edge ready to give up, who just need someone to say, "You're too valuable to lose"? John Bembry saved Malcolm X's life. Not by being a hero, not by being famous, just by being present, by noticing, by caring. And that might be the most important lesson of all. You don't have to be Malcolm X to change someone's life. You just have to be Bembry. Malcolm X almost died on day 27 of his prison sentence. One cellmate stopped him. That cellmate never sought fame or recognition. He just believed a 20-year-old kid was worth saving. That kid became one of the most important figures in American history. How many potential Malcolm X's are out there right now, on day 27 of their own prison, literal or metaphorical, ready to give up? And are we willing to be someone's Bembry? Share your thoughts in the comments.